I still remember the day I walked away from it all. The day I left behind my penthouse office with panoramic views of the city, my company's headquarters that I built from the ground up, and all the power that came with it. I was once a man whose name was spoken with respect, or perhaps fear, in every boardroom across the globe. But now, sitting alone in my lavish office, surrounded by pristine white walls and expensive furniture, I felt nothing. The emptiness was suffocating. I had always prided myself on my achievements. I built my empire through blood, sweat, and endless nights. But I was also a slave to my own success. Every day I worked, sacrificed, and accumulated more wealth. But for what? I rarely saw my family. My marriage was a hollow shell, and my children barely recognized me. All those years of hard work left me with nothing but loneliness. One night, after another sleepless week of endless conference calls and meetings, I realized something. All of this, all the money and power, it didn't bring me peace. It didn't make me happy. So I made a choice. I sold the company, liquidated everything, houses, cars, businesses, and left behind the life I had built. My wealth was supposed to bring happiness, but it only isolated me. And so, I chose to vanish from it all.
I moved to the Philippines, unsure of what I was looking for, but certain that I couldn't go back to the life I had left. The country was a world apart from the concrete jungle I had known. I rented a villa right on the ocean, where the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the silence that had haunted me for years. It was peaceful, almost too quiet. The villa was modest by comparison to the mansions I'd owned, but it was beautiful, a humble place on the edge of paradise. The tropical air felt different, fresher. It carried the scent of salt water and flowers, the earthy smell of wet soil after a rainstorm. It was here, in the simplicity of the beach, where I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. I hired a housekeeper, a kind woman who was native to the region, and a cook to prepare my meals. Maria, the cook, was young and had an infectious smile. She was warm, always attentive, and her meals were unlike anything I had ever tasted. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was just the cook, and I was still trying to adapt to my new life. But there was something about her, something that made my heart stir in a way it hadn't in years. She was so full of life, so different from the cold, distant woman I'd once married. As I watched her cook, as we shared casual conversations while she worked, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. It wasn't long before I found myself asking her to join me on a boat ride. Something simple, just to enjoy the beauty of the ocean. I thought it would be a friendly gesture. But as we spent time together on the boat, the winds and waves seeming to push us closer, I began to feel an unfamiliar attraction. She was kind, genuine, and I found myself looking at her in a way I hadn't looked at anyone in years. Maria, for her part, didn't show any signs of affection at first, but as the weeks went by, her attentions toward me became more deliberate. She would ask me if I needed anything, always making sure I was comfortable. She had a way of drawing me in, making me feel like I was the most important person in the world. At first, I thought it was just kindness, but I soon began to realize that there was something else behind it. Her presence became an addiction, and I started to believe that maybe I had found something real. I was finally feeling alive again. But the truth was, she wasn't interested in me for who I was. She saw in me an opportunity. She wasn't in love with me. She was in love with my wealth,
with the life she thought she could get by staying close to me. And then, one evening, I discovered the truth. The housekeeper, who had become a trusted friend, came to me in a quiet, almost worried voice. She told me, "You need to be careful. Maria is poisoning you." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Poison? The woman I had come to trust, to depend on? Was she really trying to kill me? My mind raced, and I felt my stomach twist into knots. But I didn't want to believe it. I thought it was paranoia, a misunderstanding. After all, why would she do such a thing?
But as days passed, my health continued to deteriorate. I felt weak, dizzy, and nauseous almost constantly. I had trouble focusing, and my body felt like it was shutting down. My once youthful vigor was slipping away. And that's when I started to connect the dots. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I started to watch Maria carefully, observing her every move. One morning, as she was preparing breakfast, I saw her slip something into my juice. My heart dropped. It was happening, just like the housekeeper had warned me. I had been poisoned. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. She had been slowly killing me, day after day, while I was oblivious. I set up hidden cameras in the house. I had to be sure. The following days were spent waiting, watching, hoping for confirmation. And then, one fateful morning, I caught her. I watched on the screen as she added more poison to my drink. I immediately called the police.
Maria was arrested, and it didn't take long for the investigation to reveal her plan. She had been poisoning me for months, all while pretending to care for me. Her true goal was to inherit my wealth, to take everything I had. The shock of it all, the betrayal, the cruelty was overwhelming. I was furious, but more than that, I was ashamed of my own blindness. I went to the hospital to recover, and while I was there, the doctors told me something chilling. My body had been subjected to slow poisoning for months, maybe even longer. They couldn't say how long exactly, but they told me it could have been fatal. The thought of it made my blood run cold. When I left the hospital, I didn't tell Maria that I knew the truth. I wanted to catch her in the act. I had to see her once more, to expose her lies completely. So I pretended that nothing had changed. I went on with life as usual. And then one morning, I saw it. She did it again. As she prepared breakfast for me, I saw her add poison to my juice. I had proof now. I called the police, and they arrived shortly after. Maria was arrested, and her fate was sealed. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison for her crimes, and our marriage was annulled. But my story didn't end there.
I knew I owed the housekeeper more than an apology. She had warned me, saved me, and I had cast her aside without listening. I reached out to her, asking if we could meet. I wanted to apologize, to make things right. When we met, the weight of my mistakes was heavy on my chest. But she listened, and after some time we found ourselves talking, really talking, for the first time in a long while. We laughed, shared our stories, and something clicked between us. We moved in together soon after, and for the first time in years I felt peace. We found a new rhythm, one that wasn't dictated by money, power, or betrayal. It was about trust, kindness, and love. We lived together by the sea, where everything began anew. I had everything once, but I had lost myself in the process.
It took losing everything to understand what really mattered. What truly mattered wasn't the wealth, the power, or the fame. What mattered was finding someone who cared, someone who was there when you needed them the most. And so, I rebuilt my life, not on money or business, but on something more lasting, something real.